Urban Meyer, 2 national championships, one of 2 coaches to win them at 2 different schools. Saban's the other one. So here we go. I was just talking to T.J. Hushmanzada. I watched the Clemson quarterback and I watched the Ohio State quarterback. And these quarterbacks now look so much better as sophomores than sometimes seniors did 10 years ago. So you've Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, Ohio State. Did you notice it in your career that 7-on-7 camps, summer drills, the kids now can read defenses at 17 years old? Did you notice? I mean, Ohio State, Justin Fields, I'm sorry, but that's an NFL quarterback. Maybe not upstairs yet, but when did you notice they're getting way better way earlier?
Well, just the Elite 11s and all these quarterback gurus that are really good. They really could coach at college or are really good coaches. And, you know, these people pay a lot of money for this training that goes on, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But you're talking about guys that are, you know, 12, 13, 14 years old that are learning how to read defenses and studying the game. Back when I was growing up, that didn't take place until college.
Yeah, YouTube, by the way, you can sit home at night and look at film all day long. It is crazy.
And they're very specialized, which I'm not a big fan of. You know, when you're a quarterback, I'm finding out in the last decade, I always believed in go play more sports.
You were big on that.
Go play basketball, go play baseball, go play other sports, and learn how to compete, where Dwayne Haskins never really did that. Dwayne Haskins was a quarterback when he was this big, and that's all he did.
You're not a fan of that?
I've seen too many players get burnt out. You know, I see guys, you know, Dwayne's obviously a very successful story, and there's other ones, but there's others that never get that thrill. When you get to, you know, I think growing up, you should be playing those other sports and experiencing things, and that those days are when you say I'm a young quarterback, that's all you do.
Yeah, I read a doctor's report yesterday that said every young kid under 19 should take 2 months off a year. Just eat. Have fun, live, because your body's growing, and it can't take the repetitive motion.
Well, my son did baseball, and I remember, you know, I pushed football, basketball, and baseball, and whatever sports he wanted to play. And a lot of his kids that his age were a little better than him because that's all they did, 12 months a year. And he started to come to me and said, I want to do that. I said, we're not going to do that. And just, you know, you'll get fined. Most of those kids are burnt out. Their arms are shot. They're done playing. You know, because I ask back, you know, what happened to these kids on your team there with these great players are not playing anymore?
And they burn out.
They burn out.
So it's interesting. It's tough for you. You're the Ohio State coach, then you leave, and now you're asked to comment on Michigan football. I tend to think what happens in the media is we overreact to everything. So Michigan plays Wisconsin in Camp Randall. First of all, I think this is the best Wisconsin defense I've ever seen. I think they're fantastic. They're fired up because Michigan and Harbaugh got a lot of bravado, and they beat the living you-know-what out of them. Now everybody thinks Michigan stinks. My takeaway is, no, they're going to beat Iowa because they're better than Iowa, and they got better personnel, and I watch recruiting. Are we being overly critical because, frankly, a better Wisconsin team crushed Michigan?
I think it was just the way they played. It was not good. The energy on the sideline, that's where I think people were very critical of it. But I never was. I think they'll rebound. I think the Big Ten is very average. You know, maybe the top's very good, but the bottom is very average now. You see some of these scores like Maryland. I thought Maryland, Nebraska, some of those teams, Northwestern, would be really good teams, and you just watch them. They don't look very good. So I think the Wolverines will get on a roll, win some games. You know, will they be what's expected of them in Ann Arbor? No, I don't think that, but I think they'll be a very good team.
Well, I mean, generally, too, if you get humiliated, generally teams bounce back. You know,
if they're made of something, they'll bounce back. If they're made, and that's something to watch. If they're made of something, they'll bounce back. It's not going to be because of talents. If they're made of something, and I think they will.
One of the things that's difficult is, and you had to deal with this your last 6 to 7 years of your career, not as much earlier as social media. Kids are on their phones. They're told how great they are. So Clemson comes into the year, and idiots like me say, I said, offensively, this could be a 48-point game juggernaut. This could be all-time stuff here. They have NFL receivers, backs, and they have been clunky on offense. And I want you to go back to maybe your Tebow teams that kids read it, and Dabo has to deal with the reality of these guys all think they're superstars. And did you ever have teams that you return a bunch of players and you found it difficult to inspire them because of what was in their head and what they were reading about themselves?
Well, we won 3 championships. One in 2006, we lost our whole team, so that was not the situation we're talking about. 2008, we had the whole team back. You had Tim Tebow back. You had the entire defense back. It was a much different team, much harder to coach.
And so you had won the year before.
We won in 08.
And then you brought him back, and it was harder.
09, we were preseason #1 by a wide margin, had a great team. We won 13-1. We lost Alabama in the SEC championship. So it was a great team, but it was not easy to coach, and we didn't repeat. Like you just said, everyone's talking about the NFL and all that. In 14, we won the national championship, had a good majority of them back, had Cardell Jones and J.T. Baird back in 15.
I remember that.
And we're preseason. I think we're preseason 1, and it was just not an easy – everybody was – it was Zeke Elliott, Mike Thomas, great players.
Oh, my gosh.
But there was a lot of conversation about the NFL. And
Urban, do you hear it in the locker room?
Oh, sure.
You do?
Yeah. You try to – first of all, they helped you win a national title. We went 13-1 again. So, a lot of people in Columbus thought it was an awful season. We went 13-1. But once again, they're great people, but you can't help. You start thinking about what's next.
Of course.
And that's hard to deal with at times.
By the way, of all this college stuff, and I do think this year we've got the best team I have seen is Alabama. I think Auburn's actually the second best team. Ohio State third, Oklahoma, LSU. There's about 7 teams I like. I think this is the best Wisconsin team I've ever seen. I think Notre Dame's absolutely for real. I don't think they're maybe Alabama real, but they're darn good and they're well coached. It's an interesting world. This California rule that won't be enacted until 2023 comes out. Pay the college kids. Well, I've always been reluctant for that if the school has to pay them, because I don't think the Oregon States and the Northwesterns have the surplus of money to pay everybody, because you pay a football player, you got to pay a tennis player. But now what California is saying, and they're saying to the NCAA, we're going to give you about 4 years to figure this out. What we're saying is YouTube can pay them, and Apple can pay them. And if they sell jerseys, a T-shirt company can pay them. My initial instinct is, this is all sorts of car dealer trouble. What was your first reaction to it?
Well, I've been hearing about this for about 3 years, and Gene Smith, our athletic director, is on one of the committees. I think he's the chair of it. Yeah. And he thinks it's going to happen. When?
Yeah.
And how do you legislate that? How do you... there's part of me say that's good, but there's a good part of me that's spent 30 years of my life in college sports. It's going to change it will never be the same. College athletics will never be the same.
I agree.
And how that impacts a person going to class and being a team first, and the whole reason why I did get into the purity of college athletics is because you get the mold 17, 18, 19-year-olds into team first mentality. That'll be gone. And I'm concerned about it. What's right, what's wrong. I think there's arguments for both sides that are very legitimate. However, how in the world do you legislate that?
I was telling Joy this morning, I'll give you a fascinating number. In the last 50 years in the NBA, there's only been 3,000 players in 50 years. Ohio State has 2,000 athletes on their campus. So you don't have enough agents to represent the kids. They're going to have to be unionized. You're going to have big bodies helping them. Well, unions are fraught with their own issues, right? That the superstars are like, what? I don't want union representation. So I think it's going to be very, very complicated. But I would say this. What's the old saying? Horse out of the barn. It's coming. Like, it's over. I mean, you're trying to fight the internet. You would agree as a former coach, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. It's just, you brought this up, the percentages of, so take an Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, the most talented teams in the country. Out of that, there's about 10%. There's a roster full of NFL talent.
Right.
How many are really going to get those opportunities? You're talking about a small percentage.
Could be 6.
And then you go down below the top 5, 6, 7 programs in America. How many are actually going to get those opportunities? I think it's a small percentage.
I do too. It's weird because in the NFL, everybody feels like they at least get paid. In college, what happens if 98% of your roster makes nothing, and then there's 6 guys that get all the money? Does it change the chemistry in the lot?
I can't imagine you're coaching a guy that's making $600,000 like Zeke Elliott. How do you convince him that he has to go to class on Tuesday and because you're 17, 18, 19 years old. So I just think the dynamics of this thing is going to be very interesting to watch. It will change college sports forever.
Yeah. Who's the best team you've seen in the country?
Best team, I'd have to say Ohio State, yet they're obviously the competition is going to get a little rugged coming up. I really like Auburn.
I like Auburn, too.
They came out of nowhere, man. I think they're tremendous. I think LSU was tremendous because they went into Texas. I like to look. I think October separates people, especially the people that haven't played anyone yet. You know, some schools haven't played a ranked team yet, so I think October is going to separate. And that's why I like to look at the teams that have played well. Alabama, Ohio State, just their talent. But I think LSU and Auburn, what they've done, they've earned that right because they've done something so far.
All right, big noon kickoff Saturday, 11 o'clock with the coach, Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, Brady Quinn, Rob Stone. Good seeing you, Urban.
Good to see you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.